partnerships and growth person. So if you want to ever talk about partnership with Mars, hit me up. And today with me is an amazing Nelly Yusupova, who's a CTO, a founder, mentor, speaker. She does absolutely everything, and that's amazing. She's leading teams to success and successful management of tech teams without even being technical. So Nelly, you would be a lot better in introducing yourself and telling what you do. So please tell us a bit about yourself, your background, what you're working on.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. It's a pleasure to be here. My journey to where I am now has been up and down, and it's been very untraditional. I became a CTO very early in my career because of an opportunity of a lifetime. I got connected with a startup, and in a startup, you get to do everything. And if you say yes to a lot of opportunities, you get to learn a lot. And that's been my lucky path, I think. Because I was brave enough to say yes, and lots of opportunities came my way, and I learned lots and lots of things on how to manage teams, how to put a process together, how do you go through all of every mistake that I made in the book, from which I learned. I am now in a position of teaching entrepreneurs to do the same, and the evolution of all of that work has really compiled into TechSpeak for entrepreneurs, where I now teach technical and non-technical founders how to implement an efficient process with their teams so that they deliver projects on time and on budget, so that they really open up the communication and the transparency within the development process, and really know how to empower the team to be at their best so that they can deliver things properly, and really get the confidence that they need as founders that part of their business is working well.
Right. And I know that it's been a very interesting ride for you. So you were managing a tech team when you were still at the university, right? And then you went to work for a startup, and then you came back to the big guys. What is the story there? So how was it for you?
Yeah, so I'm a first-generation immigrant. So I came to the United States without knowing any English. And then when I decided to learn computer science and tech, I really didn't know how to turn on a computer even. I know nothing about technology, but I went into tech because there was a huge opportunity. Like if you went into tech, you knew you were going to get a job. And that was really my early motivator to go into tech. And I majored in computer science. I, in fact, thought they were going to teach me how to use Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel really, really well.
Did they?
Yeah, they didn't, actually, to my shocking surprise. But really, it was really hard in the first 6 months because I had no clue what I was doing. But then going after that, like getting over that initial hump of learning, that's when I realized the power of technology, the power of being the creator rather than just using technology. And I got really excited. So I finished my computer science degree super fast in 3 years instead of the standard 4, which was awesome. And I couldn't wait to get a job. So I went to work in a corporate, in a startup environment by accident, because I got an internship while I was still in school, and I got connected with this company called Web Girls. And Web Girls' international mission was to get more women online. This is early 90s. So like the internet was just starting to be used by people. And we were early on, saw the need, and there was a lot of professional women who just didn't know what the internet was and how to take advantage of, and how to reskill themselves to take advantage of this new era. So this was super exciting for me because number one, growing up, I had no idea that, corporate, to me, definition of success was corporate. Go work at a corporate job and have a secure, stable job. And I never even knew that companies and startups were run by regular people. So that's how I discovered startups and connecting with Web Girls, where I became very quickly one of the team in the tech department. And over the next 6 months, the 2 tech guys that were there, they left. And I was the default person who kind of just knew everything already. And so I started running the tech department, and I was still in school. And for the next year and a half, I was really in charge of doing everything. I mean, obviously I had mentors around me. I could tap into the network that I had if I didn't know anything, which I didn't at the time. I used a lot of Google, but I had, this desire to learn and do the work, and that's paid off because I got hired out of school to go work at a big company. I had to say yes, just because I just knew, even though I loved my job, that I knew I had to go try it out to see what it was like. And it was just the wrong environment coming from the startup environment. Maybe I would have loved it if that was my direct path.
Yeah.
But coming from the startup environment where you just got to do everything, especially with a person like me, I literally was running the entire team, and I became a nothing, in a big pond. And so I took advantage of this opportunity that came just 11 months later, where WebGirl's CEO said, if you jump off and become our CTO, then you have this opportunity to now bring this organization into what our vision was. And so for me, it was a no-brainer. I had to leaving my cushy job to go work at a startup, but everyone else around me thought I was insane to make that decision. But it was a very pivotal moment for me, because that kind of an opportunity doesn't come very often. And today our topic is, do you need a CTO? At what point do you need a CTO? And all of that stuff is all connected to me. I was one of those lucky ones who grew into that CTO position, because in my early 20s, I really didn't know what I was doing as a CTO, right? I was a developer.
That you were a CTO.
Right? Exactly. It's I had the title, but I didn't have all of the skills required. And so it's really important for, as a startup founder, to understand what is it that you need in the early days. And in the early days, they really did need all of the skill sets that I had, which was development. There was some management, but there was not a big team. So there was not much to manage, right? But it was all about building the product and the process. And then eventually I had to manage the team, grow the product, learn all of these things. But that came later.
Right. And since we're reminiscing a little bit about the good old days, and this is something that we talk a lot right now, because, well, I come from a tech company, right? And we're talking a lot about innovation. And we kind of think that the innovation kind of stopped somewhere there, in the 90s. And since then, it just was getting more and more complicated, right? So what's your take on that? Was it a bit easier? Did you need less time for development back then? And because now we're talking about needing the CTO, is the technology so, I don't want to even say advanced now, but so complicated, overcomplicated, that you actually need someone to just untangle it all for you?
Well, there's two ways to look at that. Because in the early 90s, there was no tools. And in order for us to even host a server, we had to buy a $15,000 server, a used one, right? It's not, the new one would be $60,000. We actually had to buy the server. We had to host it in our office. All of that was so difficult, just to set up the server took weeks. And that to me is insane. Now, if you just need a hosting company, you just go and have an entire infrastructure on AWS, and you can just pull the pieces together, and it takes minutes rather than weeks. So to build a community, we had to build one from scratch. And in fact, we were building one for WebGirls, our very first community online for our members. And that was so difficult because there was so few resources, not even a lot of people had internet. And everything was much more difficult to do, rather than, I think there's a lot of options now, but it's so much easier to think about it as Lego pieces, right? If you need to solve a problem, you could say, I can use this third-party tool, this API, this custom code, this library, a lot of these things, and put them all together. And obviously you need to know what the options are, but it saves so much time from a development standpoint. To be able to, especially in the early days where you just need to test out an idea, to move quickly, that's what's amazing. For us, in order to even test out an idea in the early 90s, you had to spend a lot of money, at least like $500,000 was not, it was not unheard of to even just get started, because everything had to be custom coded and it would take a lot longer to be able to do. So I think it's a lot easier now, because I've been in both situations, to be able to build a startup, to be able to build anything. And because of the no-code tools and the no-code revolution and the low-code revolution, there's just so much out there. If you just know what the Lego blocks that you need to be able to get your job done faster, it's so much faster.
Okay. All right. So now, we moved on to this dilemma that we have now, whether it's, it has to be custom code or no code. So what team are you?
I'm a both team.
Okay.
Right. There's no right solution. So a lot of people come to me and ask me, like, what should I use to build X? What should I build to build Y? And my answer is, it all depends. Like, what are you trying to achieve? And at the end of the day, if my goal and what I teach my founders is learn early, learn often, and learn cheap. Your job as an entrepreneur is to figure out whether your idea has legs, if it can be made into a business. And it's not about building a whole bunch of technology and only to realize that nobody really wants it. The number one reason why a lot of startups fail, it's not because they couldn't build a product, it's because they weren't able to find a problem large enough with a customer base large enough that wants that product. And so in the early days, your job is to optimize everything in your product to be able to just know, hey, this is a problem that somebody cares about. And if it takes you 6 months to a year to just build the product, that's just too long, right? So use whatever tools that are at your disposal to help you validate as early as you can that this is something that you can pay, that you have customers for that are willing to pay you for it. And it doesn't have to be a complete solution. Your first version can be just a whole bunch of no-code tools glued together, right? To be able to just make sure that, hey, you can provide the service. And I have lots of examples of students who have done that. And they were able to pre-sell their solutions, get letters of intent, even before they had a product built. So there's too much emphasis on building the product, and finding product market fit is really the way that I would recommend that you go is find the market first, find the problem big enough, and understand how to solve that problem so that your customers can pay you even without necessarily having a product. I know a lot of people who do the tech side manually at the early days, right? So that they can prove that this is going to be viable. So there's lots of different ways to go around it. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, even if you're an established startup, you could still use no-code tools, low-code tools, third-party tools, APIs to be able to, it's a combination, right? And some custom code. And that's what you should be thinking. How do I get there quickly and then optimize and refine as you need it?
Okay, that's awesome. And I just want to take a moment and say that there are some people who are listening to us. So if you have questions, we are monitoring those. So feel free to ask anything, and we'll be happy to answer. But yeah, this is really awesome piece of information, and I think there are a lot of resources that are talking about it now, like do something manually, go and validate. So what was your story? What was how was TechSpeak born? Out of what pain, right? And what was your story?
Yeah, I actually never planned it. I was at the time CTO of WebGirls. I was also wanting to work on my speaking career. I loved speaking, I still do, and teaching, and wanted to combine both of my passions. And so I started doing that. I went to speak at a lot of different conferences, and the topics were, how do you manage a team? How do you build a product successfully? A lot of the things that I'm talking about now, I was doing back then. And so after every single event that I did, I had a huddle of entrepreneurs sharing their horror stories about how they had an idea and they worked with this tech person and they lost thousands of dollars, or they didn't know that this person could actually build a product? All of these questions that to me were so basic, right? And I couldn't understand why there were no resources out there. So I started looking for them. And I was shocked to find that there was nothing complete and comprehensive that will show founders how to actually build a product, how to manage a team. There were project management courses and product management courses, and those by themselves are, their entire careers built on top of those. But as a founder, you need to know and understand how to do all of those jobs without having to go to school for every one of those things. And so that was really what I was looking for. They needed something really quick to learn and really understand, but not necessarily a deep dive into how do you do that job yourself? How do you work effectively with a product manager and a development team and designers? And how do you communicate effectively so that the entire team understands what you're trying to do, right? As a company, how do you, as a leader? So that was my goal. I couldn't find anything out there. And I thought, I can do that. I do this every day. And so that's how TechSpeak was born. I created a curriculum and I started teaching it. So my minimal viable product was not to spend months and months and months perfecting the program. I actually didn't know what the program should be. I created a curriculum, kind of like a skeleton of what I thought it should be. And then I went to teach it and I refined it. Every single time I did one, I learned so much by the types of questions that were asked, by the types of people that showed up, right? And I was able to refine the material and the curriculum because I was there live. I was able to address those questions, but then I wanted to have that in the session the next time. And so over the many years of teaching it in person, I actually was able to iterate on the product. And when I put it online, it's now the complete comprehensive one because I know I've already addressed a lot of those questions that would have come had I, spent years trying to perfect it. It wouldn't be as complete as it was the way that I did it.
Okay, and what about your customers? I shouldn't probably say users. It doesn't really make any sense here. But what about your customers? How did you get the first one? Well, that's probably quite easy from your huge network and your offline events. But still, when you put it out there, how did you go about it?
Yeah, my early customers they came from my network, and I did a lot of partnerships. I think this is a tactic a lot of startups don't leverage as much. They think they need to go pay for ads and whatever else. But in the early days, it's very difficult to know even who is going to be the type of person and how do you actually get them to say yes? So my strategy was to do partnerships. I know already communities of startup founders where they hang out. There's a group that organizes every month in this city, in this city, in this city. And I know that they're all entrepreneurs, they're early stage entrepreneurs. So I would go to their founders, their leaders, and tell them about all the work that I'm doing. And I would love to either do a workshop or even do a partnership where they would send out an announcement about the event, and we would do all kinds of different deals for them to be involved. And they all loved what I was doing because it was such a problem in the market that no one was solving. And so it was actually a pretty easy sell because as soon as I would say what I was doing, they're like, oh my gosh, let's work together. So that was a really good strategy because I didn't have to have an audience of my own who needed this. I just went to the audiences that were already established. And a lot of startups can do that as well, is to see what other parallel audiences that you're trying to reach and just figure out how to provide value to them. And do some kind of partnership.
Okay, that's awesome. That's what we do. Yay. So yeah, let's talk about what we came here to talk about. So say I'm a no technical entrepreneur. I want to validate my idea. I go to the easiest thing I see out there, to a no code solution. What do you think? Should I involve someone still with some kind of technical knowledge, because I'm so far off. And because ultimately no code solutions will not sustain me for the long run. So should I get someone on board from the beginning with the technical knowledge, or should I just think about it later?
Well, to answer your question, sometimes even if you want to get somebody on board, most of the time, like 99% of the time, even if you want to get somebody on board at the early stage, the chances of you getting somebody good are so slim, so slim that you shouldn't even try. Like, that's my advice, because I've had thousands of entrepreneurs go through this process. And the reason why it doesn't work at the beginning, let's say you just have an idea and you say, ooh, I need a technical person to come help me think through this. And I want them to work for free, because that you're looking for a co-founder, you're looking for a CTO. And so now think about it from the other angle. I'm a CTO. I have lots of opportunities. I can go work anywhere I want. I can make a lot of money. And now I come and get an inquiry from an unknown person with no past success, no traction. And they say they have $1 billion idea. Guess how many of those inquiries I get on a daily basis? At least 10, right? At least 10 every day. So now, if you think of it from that perspective, like, what is my incentive to say yes to you rather than the thousands of other people who are in the same shoes? So what I teach entrepreneurs is to actually earn your technical co-founder or your CTO. So what does that involve? The underlying principle is focus on traction, figure out how to validate your idea, really understand how to acquire the customers. What is that number one problem that they're going to pay you money with, right? And if you can, use the no-code solutions tools to be able to build a solution and prove traction. Go and sell the product, right? Every little step that you take towards making that idea a reality, and so that it's not just an idea, but that it actually has legs, the more success you're going to have in attracting anyone into your company, whether it's a technical person, whether it's an investor, whether it's another partner, anything else, right? So the one thing that you need to focus on at the early stages is just focus on traction. How can you get more traction? Because then you're now pitching from a position of opportunity rather than a position of need. I need you to come help me build my product because I can't, right? Like, if you think of that as a sales pitch, would you say yes? If anybody said, I need you, like, right, nobody's going to say yes. But if you say, hey, I have this amazing opportunity. I already did this and this and this and this. I have customers waiting out the door. Imagine, like, this is what I've been able to do without you. Imagine what we can do together. Like, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is what I would encourage you to do. And so getting back to the question, should you use no-code tools? Absolutely. And like, I have people in my program who join TechSpeak, they learn how to validate and all of that stuff. And then they actually learn the no-code tools. Sometimes you don't need to. You can hire somebody else who can do it faster if that's what you want. But if you have the extra time to learn how to use the no-code tool, then go and do it. Right? It depends on your technical ability, right? How non-technical you are and how strapped for time are you. Because even if you use no-code tools, it doesn't mean that you have to do them yourself. Like, you have to use and build the tool on that tool yourself. There are lots of experts, lots of developers who use those tools, and they can help put together a solution for you. But you need to be able to do that early validation. You need to build a clickable prototype, which is very easy to do. You don't have to be super technical to do it. And then when you already know exactly what needs to go into your product, putting a solution together is so much easier, right? And so you're working directly and together with the developer, but we're not talking about CTO here, right? We're talking about someone technical to help you if you need the help, but it's not a CTO. You don't need a CTO at this stage, because you're not really thinking, how am I going to scale this to millions of people? You're not thinking that we're going to have 10 developers working together and we need someone to manage them. We need to hire a team, right? That comes later. And then, so while you're proving traction, you should still be connecting with other CTOs, building relationships with them, meeting new people. Like, it's just like dating. If you want to get married, you're not going to just pick the first person that says yes to you, which That's a big mistake that I see it still happens, right? But you shouldn't say that. It's like asking someone to marry you on the first date. No.
Yeah.
So build the relationships parallel to you building traction, so that by the time you already have some traction, you have people that you can pitch that saw you make progress over time, and then you're going to have a lot more success.
Right, but I agree with you, but when you hire somebody, when you hire a freelancer, and I actually think hiring a freelancer maybe is a better way to go, rather than hire say a dev shop, right, to do that, because they would be able to do everything you want them to, and that might be a mistake, because they're able to build everything you want to, right? Even if it's, a total crap. They're not going to validate, they're not going to tell you, this is not what you need for the project. So what do you think? Who should I involve as an early stage, for the validation? Say I'm building something technical as a non-technical founder. Should I go to a freelancer? Maybe, I don't know, my board second cousin who knows some development, or or I should still go to the dev shop, to the outsourced company?
So it depends on what you're building, and there's pros and cons to making the decision. Definitely never hire your cousin. That's going to be a big mistake. But unless you have a professional, like you're able to separate the family from the professional, because if they're not doing their job, you need to be strong enough and confident enough to say, hey, you're not doing your job, and you can't either work here or whatever else, right? For most people, it's a very difficult conversation to have. So I always say 99% of the time, that's not a good fit. Like, don't even go there. If you want to have dinners and a relationship with that person afterwards, don't even go there. Now we're stuck with making a decision of freelancer versus agency. And there is no right or wrong answer here. Freelancer, you should technically have more control over them because you are working directly with them, but you still need to know how to manage them. You can't just trust them that they're going to do the thing. They oftentimes don't have their own process, because freelancers just do what you tell them to. And if you expect them to manage themselves, big mistake. That's where a lot of issues will arise. So you have to do a lot more management on the freelance side. But if you are hiring an agency, they already have kind of the infrastructure. But even if you hire an agency, I always recommend that you still work directly with the developers that work with you, right? So there's no that separation of us versus them. I call that developer as a service arrangement, because otherwise you're too far away from the process. Then it's just so many things can go awry. Right. All of the horror stories that we hear about working with an agency, it's as a result of you kind of just trusting that the agency process is going to work. But I always say, have your own process, which is the process that I teach. Do the validation, do the lean process, and then involve the developers in it, right? Bring that process to that. And so you're almost like developer as a service, right? You're hiring the developers. Yes, the agency will have their own project manager, product manager, and all of that stuff, but you're managing the developers, and having a vetted developer that actually has a place to go to work. Now it gives you a little bit more of comfort, maybe, because the one downside to working with a freelancer is the freelancer, it's a one person, right? If they have something personal come up, all of a sudden they disappear. Yeah. And so there's pros and cons to both. It all depends. The answer is always all depends.
Okay. Then, I want to ask you maybe a little bit of a silly question, and maybe again, an it depends question, but what do you think is a trajectory of a successful startup's life? So what should they go through? Like, what is maybe some common things that you see in your experience?
So to me, the most successful startups are the ones that are optimized for learning really quickly. I think way too many startups commit to whatever idea they fall in love with, and they don't test it early enough and often enough, and it go like you're just going in the wrong direction, possibly for 6 months to a year, when you need to be able to pivot very quickly and test and iterate a lot faster than what most startups do. And so the most successful ones are the ones that try a lot of things. They may fail more by our traditional definition of failure, but they're also learning a lot more. And so because they're learning so quickly, they're learning what's working, what's not working. They're actually getting a lot more data points on getting more informed decisions on the next steps that they need to take. And so on average, by iterating a lot more and failing more, you're actually getting to success a lot faster, and saving a lot of time and money in the process as well.
Okay. And, with the rise of all the low code, no code, especially no code solutions, what is the roadmap of the non-technical founders? So, say I want to build something, I'm non-technical, what should I do? Where do I jump first? If it's anything apart from just validating my idea and like talking to pretty much anybody that I can get a hold of, what is it in your opinion?
So there is a resource I'm going to share that is absolutely free, that a lot of founders who are in this boat can go and watch. It's a webinar. It's an on-demand webinar that I have on my website, techspeak.co, and go to free classes. And this webinar is titled How to Build an MVP Without a Technical Co-Founder. And it will outline exactly what you need to do using the 10-step process that I teach. The first 2 steps are validate and prototype, right? Those 2 things should be done at the very beginning for as long as you need to, because I think most founders, the number one problem that I see with a lot of founders is that they're solving level 5 or 6 problems. And what I want them to do before they get into any tech, no code, low code, or anything else, is to really understand that they're solving a level 12 out of 10 problem, right? So this is like a painkiller problem that they know that customers will pay for. They should already understand who are their customers. They should maybe pre-sell their solution in just those 2 phases, get letters of intent, get customers. I've had examples of people who have actually done it because they have found a problem. They've already understand how to acquire those customers and find 2, 3, 5, 10 of those people who are saying yes. Then you already have the confidence that, hey, I need to invest more time and money to actually build this thing. Maybe in the meantime, you are going to provide the service for manually, not for free, right? So, and then you parallel to that start to figure out what's the right way to build the solution. Is it going to be no code first, low code, no code, low code, some custom coding, or do you need to build some infrastructure? Probably not necessary unless you're going after an enterprise client where they are already expecting that. So it depends, right? But you having to do those first 2 steps really well and already having customers under your belt will then help inform the decision of what approach you need to take. And of course, even if you are an established startup, you should always be leveraging other people's tools on the market. Like, for example, we, in the early days, in the early 90s, had to build our own email server. And that means thousands of hours and lots of money, not just building it, but maintaining it. It's so expensive. And like this job, it was the one I hated the most because it wasn't my expertise. I hated it. I hate knowing everything about email, and it's annoying. Right? But if you nowadays, you can outsource that to any other third-party email servers, right? They have thousands of developers just solving that problem. So you should never, ever build your own email server, right? Even if you're an established company. And so that's the thought process that you should be having when you're trying to pick the tools. Okay, we're going to custom build this, but we're going to use some of these already existing established tools, and we're going to outsource not all of our core competency to everybody else, right? And we don't have to maintain. The best part of it is that you don't have to maintain that and keep up to date with all the changing environments in that specific software. So unless it's core to what you're building, you don't necessarily need to build it yourself.
Right. I absolutely agree with you. If it's something replicable, just take it wherever you can. So nothing wrong with, out of the box solutions and no code, but still, do you think that no code as it is right now is not really sustainable if the startup wants to grow and scale? Because first of all, no-code solutions still require some kind of learning, right? And it's some solutions like, I don't know, Webflow. I tried it. Oh my God, never want to go back there. That was complicated. And yeah, a lot of no-code solutions require a lot of learning, and a lot of people don't know that. And then when you hit the ceiling, at a lot of times you have to scratch that. So do you think that it's the no-code solutions that will have to somehow adjust to that and give you another layer of access, another layer of customization? Or is it still going to be custom code? But then again, custom coding has to change somehow and give an opportunity to reuse some of the code, because this is ultimately not very possible right now. What do you think?
Well, I think a lot of no-code tools are really targeted to more technical, non-technical people, if you want to say it, right? So there is a lot of people who want to be developers, but they're not actual developers, right? So they think like technical people, and they can really jump on a tool. And I think the learning process is about 2 to 3 months if you want to learn a tool deeply and really take advantage of all that it has to offer. And most non-technical people coming from a wide variety of backgrounds, they don't think like that. They don't think in if then else statements, right? Like developers do. And so in order for us to make the leap of every non-technical founder could go and build their own thing, then we do need for the tools to change a bit and become more intuitive. But I would argue that that's not even the thought process we should have, because I don't want my CEO to learn how to code. It's not their job, right? The job of the CEO is to pull a team together that can help speed up the process, the go-to-market process. And if we require that all of our CEOs now build their own tools, like how quickly, like the CEO should be selling, they should be going and getting customers. They need to be doing other work. Every person in a startup has their job. And so I always say, learn the process, learn what the tools are and their capabilities, know how to talk, right? That's why my program is called TechSpeak, but I'm never going to teach you how to code, because if you want to learn how to code and you have the time, you're more likely going to be on the technical side and you're going to be a developer. And if you already know how to code and you want to be a CEO, great. Coding will never hurt you. But practically, if you want to build a company, to build your own stuff, you're going to outgrow your expertise so quickly that it's not even worth doing, right? So I say, go learn the tools, get familiar with them, so that if you hire someone who's an expert in that tool, let's say somebody spent a year and a half in doing stuff in that tool versus you just coming in, who's going to be more efficient at getting stuff done, right? I would rather hire the person who's already put in the hours and the time and has the experience to be able to get me from point A to point B faster, and pay them. And then that buys me my time to actually do the things that I'm hired to do, which is CEO jobs, right? And the skill set of the CEO is very, very valuable. Shouldn't be wasted on doing things that necessarily you shouldn't be doing. So that's a way to actually grow a company, rather than constantly being in the weeds of building the company, rather than focusing on the right things at the right time. So the answer is, there's lots of tools at your disposal. You have to always answer, is my time more valuable, or do I need to actually, I don't have money, I have a lot of time, then go and learn the tool and maybe do that. But know that at some point you're going to outgrow that and you will still have to hire people, right? And at the end of the day, it's going to be a combination of no code, low code, custom code. And you may know some of the tools and very quickly will realize that you still need to hire a developer to connect them all, because it's just a totally different skill set. So I want you, as if you're a CEO, I want you to think, how do I work with the people who already have the expertise to help me put together a solution? And when I need to, I can hire more people. But at the end of the day, it's just a waste of time for me, for the CEO to actually do the work.
Okay. All right. That's, we're talking about startup, of course, here, and the team. And what is your take on indie makers and solo founders? And it's this huge group, and we're also working with them. And what we found is that they would actually rather do something, and like you said, use these Lego blocks to just put something together, but they would rather do it themselves and, focus on something, again, do it quickly, focus on idea validation, focus on selling, probably to their own community, but they would still rather do everything themselves.
Yeah, it all depends on how quickly you want to grow, right? If you're doing everything yourself, you're probably not growing as fast as you could have been if you had people helping you. It all depends on what your goals are, how quickly you want to grow, what are your revenue goals, right? If you want to make $5,000 a month versus $50,000 a month, $100,000 a month, those are two different types of startups. And so if you're an indie maker and you are happy with the pace that you're at which you're going and the amount of money you're making, then you're good, right? There's no right or wrong here. As long as what your goals are aligning with what you want to do and what you want to accomplish, and you're there, then you don't need to change anything. But if ultimately you want to grow your startup and actually get beyond 10K a month, you need to build a team. You just can't be doing everything. And I've actually seen people who just with an assistant, and like if they're really efficient, and let's say you're a technical person and you already have the skill set, it's going to be a lot easier for you to be the indie hacker and build the tools because you're so much faster at it. But what I also see is that they're not spending enough time selling. It's very difficult. As a person who knows both jobs, it's very difficult to do both and do both really well. You're either really good at the technical stuff and not so good at marketing, or you're really good at marketing and not so good at tech. The combination of having both is very, very difficult to have. But if you do, that's great, right? It all depends on your situation, your goals, and what you're trying to accomplish and how fast you want to get there.
Right. It's like whenever we write an article about it, about development, about growing as an indie hacker or a startup, there is always this rival, like what to write. Is it more difficult to develop a product? Is it more difficult to sell a product? And then, there is probably not no one right answer, but it's very, very interesting to just debate about it. So you said that there were a lot of horror stories in your experience when something failed because someone hired a CTO too early, or because they couldn't talk to them in their language, basically. So could you maybe share one or two, like as an example, like what to avoid, especially as a non-technical founder?
Absolutely. I have so many. I'm going to share one from a recent past. So this woman was in real estate and she had this big idea of what she was going to do. She was totally non-technical. As non-technical as one can come. And she knew that she had to hire somebody who was at that level, CTO type level person. And she knew that it was going to cost a lot of money. And in her town of Middle America. I'm not going to mention that. She did identify this person because they had a recent success working with someone else, and they were a part of that organization. I don't think she knew actually what exactly he did, but he was a part of that organization. So to her, that signaled success, confidence that, hey, this person can help me get there. So she didn't have money. In order to pay him, she had to sell her house. And, but she had the confidence, hey, this is an idea that is going to make a lot of money. So she hired this person. She had complete trust that what he was doing is going to be the right thing.
Yeah.
Now, not maliciously, I believe, this person decided that he had a strategy. The entrepreneur that I'm working with, assumed that he was going to be doing the work. Again, assumed. Didn't check, didn't know, didn't ask. She assumed that he was going to do all the work. But what he decided to do is hire an offshore team in Pakistan and outsource all of the work to them. Would check in with them once in a while. They did some of the work, right? But nobody actually managed them closely. He didn't do any of the code reviews. He didn't really, he just had a hands-off approach. He just assumed that they were going to do the work really well. Now, a year and a half later, she had some version of the product. It wasn't working. There was lots of bugs. And it got to a point where she would check in with this technical person and he would just say, I'm working on it. I'm going to get the answers to you. And it just became an impossible situation. So she has a year and a half later, a non-working product, and she can't get this person to communicate with her. And what do? Right? This is now thousands of dollars later, and she doesn't have a working product. So when she came to TechSpeak, she had to literally start from scratch. And I've worked with her one-on-one closely, so I know her story really well. We looked at the code and it was totally unusable. It was totally unusable. It was like a junior developer out of school just wrote this. So she had to start from scratch. And this is not an unusual situation. And the reason why I believe this happened is because she did not work closely. Number one, she just completely trusted that this person is going to do the work. And she didn't have daily meetings with him. She didn't have conversations with him on a regular basis and set the expectations. This is how we're going to work. And if she had a process that she used, she would have uncovered some of these red flags that were there from the very beginning, earlier on. And maybe she would have been able to save the project way before a year and a half, right? There's so many things that you can do in a year and a half that, okay, so you made a mistake. It only maybe cost you 3 months of money rather than a year and a half worth of money. And she had no product at the end of it. She had to start from scratch. So those types of stories just break my heart because they could have completely been avoided had the entrepreneur known exactly what to do in what order, how to set those expectations, and ultimately had the confidence to actually stand up for what they know is not happening. Because every founder that I've ever talked to, they have the hunch. They have the pit in the stomach that something is off and something is wrong, but they don't know what to do about it. They don't know if they can speak, if they can address it. They're afraid that this developer is just going to walk away.
Right.
And then what am I going to do then? But that's my goal, is to teach them how to be confident, to know how to address those issues and give them the process so that from day one, they already set the right expectations and they're not going to get into a situation where it's a year and a half later and you still don't have a product. A working product.
But I completely understand. I mean, first of all, you're afraid that, they're going to say something you're still not going to understand and you don't want to look stupid, and in this case, it's probably also his his authority, because she thought he was a success. How do you ask this big successful person, if something is going wrong? So yeah, so I completely understand, but that's definitely a horror story. I really hope that resolved itself with your help, of course. But what would be your given this whole situation, and I assume that there are a lot of those, what would be your advice to the first time founders?
So the number one thing is to become technically literate. It's if you're going to be in tech, and everything is going to be in tech. So even if you're not in tech, if you're building a bakery, you're going to be in tech. So in the next 2 years, like you're going to be in tech. So no matter where you are, no matter what type of business you're running, you need to understand technology. You need to stop saying, but I'm not a technical person, right? Like you need to speak the language. Again, you don't need to learn how to code. You don't need to dive deep into tech, but I want you to understand the basics. I want you to understand how things in the backend fit together. What are like all the buzzwords, the APIs and databases, and what are different things used for, so that you can have an understanding when you're talking to a technical person, whether they're giving you good advice, are they BSing you, right? Like sometimes when you hear fancy terms, you're like, oh, this person knows what they're talking about. But in fact, they're like, they just have no clue. They're just using fancy words. I did an interview yesterday for a developer who knew how to speak like nobody else. And then we started asking him technical questions, and he could barely answer the basics of the technical questions, right? So people who know how to talk, you need to be able to dig a little bit deeper to be able to understand, do they know what they're talking about truly? And then, so the first thing is technical literacy. Then you need to have a roadmap. You need to understand what process you can use to manage the team, to communicate with them, set the right expectations. And finally, you need to be able to have the confidence to manage and lead. Because if you don't have the confidence, you could have, if you're not able to step in and actually get involved and be the heavy if you need to, right? It's not going to work. And then at the end of the day, you will still need to have technical advisors, maybe a fractional CTO that you can tap into, because like I said, let's say you found a talker who just talks a good game, but is not actually technical. If you do the interview, you find good people, and then hire someone, either a fractional CTO or even an advisor, right? Say, hey, can you interview this person? Can you talk to them, ask them a few technical questions to assess their technical skill set? Then you'll have a lot more confidence that, hey, they're not just only a good talker, but they also have the skills to be able to back that up. So that's really important. If you have all those 4 things, you should be set.
Okay, that's awesome, and I hope everyone wrote it down. And just a couple more questions. What was the thing that sustained you in your business, and what makes you grow, and what motivates you?
So what motivates me about continuing to do this work and is just seeing the results, is just seeing in the early days when I used to teach this, it was a grueling process because I used to teach all of this information in 2 days over a 2-day weekend. And that meant I had to teach for 16 hours of nonstop talking. And I loved every minute of it because I saw people walk in one way, and just 2 days later, they were completely different entrepreneurs, right? And I saw those results very quickly. I saw the confidence that they would build up in just 2 days. And that was my motivating factor. And so when I put TechSpeak online, I was so excited because now I didn't have the barriers of actual event-based and location-based. And now entrepreneurs from all over the world could come and take this and get access to this because I knew the impact that it had on people and entrepreneurs, and being able to scale myself to work with more and more entrepreneurs. That's what really excites me, because I know the impact that the program has, and now I can do it on a bigger scale. So I'm so excited about taking this to so many levels now, because it's not location dependent, and it's not dependent just on me to be able to teach at a certain time.
Right. So once you taste a little bit of that success, you drive yourself forward.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And I have one more question for you. So ultimately, you have this amazing, huge network, you know, a lot of awesome founders or mentors. It's up to you. Who do you think we should ask to the podcast next? Maybe one or two people who inspire you, who you maybe want to listen to.
Yeah, I love this woman. Her name is Allison Byers. She's
coming. Yes.
Is she coming?
Yes.
I think she's going to be an amazing guest. I love her. She helps founders with raising money and how to ask, again, confidently, how to ask for more money. And she works with underrepresented founders. I love all the work that she's doing. So I was going to recommend her for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, great. Then, you know, we're doing the right job here. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Nelly. I think it's been absolutely super valuable. And, you know, I learned a lot, and I had a very, very interesting conversation with you. So thank you for sharing your thoughts, your secrets. And ultimately, I'll be very happy to have you again here soon.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. All right. Take care.